Greetings Realm Lords, COR here, and I'm just coming off of 3 videos where I went through an entire playthrough of what a game looks like in the Circle of Realms. And by the end of that playthrough, I mentioned that there were a few things rule-wise that I wasn't too happy with about the previous game. Mostly they're minor tweaks and changes that need to be made, but there were a few major things that I felt needed to be adjusted. And one of them was how you win the game. When I first made this game, and for the longest time after, the way you won a game of the Circle of Realms was just by beating other players into submission. Either eradicate them completely or get them to the point where they all agree to surrender. You could win in an alliance if you teamed up with another player or two, depending on how many players were in the game, and then just beat everyone else into submission. But still that process was the same. There wasn't a clear win trajectory, and until other players actually gave up, you couldn't really stop the game and declare someone as the victor without upsetting the people who hadn't surrendered yet. And that worked very nicely when we could play this game over summer breaks growing up, or winter breaks growing up, or just in general get together like every weekend to play the game. But as adults with work schedules, family schedules, people living in completely different geographical locations, we need a tighter way to win. And this is something I noticed as I play more board games today and a lot of different types of board games today. I definitely notice that older games tend to have this sort of beat into submission mentality. Think like Risk, where you dominate the entire world and it can take forever to do so, versus a lot of contemporary games which usually have some sort of a victory point system where players are edging closer and closer to victory every turn, and there's an objective marker for who's winning and who's losing at any given time. So let's talk about what I've learned from these and how I'm going to be making adjustments tentatively to the Circle of Realms. So first off, I want to declare one thing very simply. A lot of the games today that use victory point systems are going to be much shorter than the Circle of Realms. This is still designed to be a marathon game for multiple play sessions. I don't want a victory point system that imposes essentially like a 4-hour limit to a game. That being said, I want something where if players have to stop playing a game, we can objectively sit down and say, this is the winner. And I want something where victories will happen without beating all the other players into submission. Whether they like it or not, other players are going to lose once someone crosses the finish line. It's just a long and far finish line to get to. When I think of inspiration I was looking at for systems like these, a game I've been playing a lot lately, especially these last couple months, has been Dune Imperium, which has a number of different ways you can get victory points every turn. I also took some ideas from Star Wars Outer Rim, which is a similar system where they use fame and you want to try to get the most fame in the galaxy. But there are tons of games with victory point systems. And to say that I'm really taking from one in particular is kind of silly. And to be fair, the system that I'm going to use is a little bit different from everything I've seen out there. Without more rambling, let's talk about what it is. Now, if you look in front of me, I've got the card holders for 2 factions in the Circle of Realms. I've got the Rebels over here, and I've got the Cursed Kingdom over here. I showed these off in my playthrough. They're very much still prototype card holders. I actually have a 3D printer now, and I am in the process of designing a very nice 3D printed card holder that will fit very snugly on the sides and not quite be as bulky or as fragile as these are. But the basic idea is the same. Now, I'm not really interested in the cards on here. I didn't really want to make something that would require me to design even more cards for the Circle of Realms and to get more cards printed. The thing that makes cards tricky is if I do something with cards for the game and I don't like the way it turned out, then I have to design and reorder new cards. Whereas if I change like abilities for units and things like that, I just have to update my website and then bam, it's good to go. And the same can be true of anything that's represented with actual physical Legos. I just have to swap out the parts and I'm all set. And so with that said, I'm really gonna go with the physical Lego route for this system. So why do the card holders matter? Well, if you look at the top of the card holders, the top has a bunch of flags across them. Each of them have 10 flags for your faction. And these flags have always been in the game. They served the simple purpose of showing who owns a building when someone captures a building that belongs to another player. So in past games when you play the Circle of Realms, when you build a building, you don't put one of your flags on it because it's assumed that it's your building because it belongs to your faction. But if you capture someone else's building, or if you're capturing a neutral building, you can put your flag down on that building to show that you control it so no one's confused over who owns what. And I was looking at these 10 flags and I was thinking of a 10 victory point kind of system, and I thought, there might be something I can do here. And so here's the idea that I'm playing with in my head, and I want you guys to let me know in the comments what you think as we go through this. Tell me if there's something you like, tell me if there's something you're critical of, tell me if there's a way that you think I can tighten it and make it better. I'm open ears to suggestions because this is very much in the early phase of me implementing a new idea in the Circle of Realms. Which is kind of cool because a lot of the videos I've been showing you have been stuff that have been going on for a long time, and while I've been making changes to those things, none of those ideas are really in their infancy. They've been getting a lot of thought from me. This is a brand new thing. So I would like to refer to these flags going forward as influence flags. And your goal in the Circle of Realms is going to be to spread your influence throughout all the realms, which means spreading your influence flags. So it's a little bit different from other games I've played because you're not trying to really accrue victory points. You're basically trying to get rid of your victory points, if you will. You're trying to get rid of your influence flags and get them everywhere else. And to get rid of these flags, there's to be several ways that you can spread your influence. And so here are the ideas that I've come up with. Number one, just like before, if you capture a building that belongs to someone else, you get to plop your influence flag on that building as long as you control it. That flag is no longer in your possession. It has been spread out onto the battlefield. But if someone else captures that building or the original owner reclaims that building, then that flag goes right back into your possession. But I want to expand on this, and I want players to be able to spread influence flags whenever they accomplish any sort of major milestone in the Circle of Realms. And I want there to be a nice mix of milestones because I want different play styles to have different ways of getting all their flags. A real aggressive player can come in and just obliterate buildings and get a bunch of flags spread that way, whereas a defensive player could hold out for a long time and earn flags defensively. Someone could even sidestep conflicts altogether and spread all their flags without fighting anybody, at least in theory, but really if that person never has to fight anyone to spread all those flags, then the other players deserve to lose. So let's run through all the ways I came up with. So at its core, a nice, simple, straightforward way, the most straightforward way, is going to be advancing tech ages. So when you advance to tech age 2, 3, and 4 respectively, you get to take one of your influence flags and you can spread it to any other player you want. So for example, if I, as the Rebels, advance to tech age 2, I can remove one of my influence flags and spread it to another player. So maybe I give it to the Cursed Kingdom. Likewise, if you unlock any unlockables, the second you unlock an unlockable, you can also spread your flag to a player of your choice. So maybe I spread another flag to the Cursed Kingdom if I get an unlockable out on the field. Like I said, when you capture a building, you get to spread an influence flag. I think that I would like to do that for buildings controlled by other players, but also neutral buildings too. If you have control of a neutral building, you should be able to spread your influence flag to that building. And keep in mind, there are 8 different neutral buildings in the Circle of Realms that can be captured. So if you really put that together with tech ages, someone could spread all 10 flags just by doing that. But in order to control a neutral building, you need to always have a unit on it at all times. So you would have to basically spread 8 units to very different sections of the map and essentially hope that none of the other players are going to give a resistance. And those 8 units would have to hold off those neutral buildings against any other teams that want to take them over. So I like this as it adds an element of kind of like a conquest or a territory control element to the broader game of the Circle of Realms. It gives more value to neutral buildings than just training neutral units and the inherent perks that those buildings offer. In addition to that, whenever you complete a quest for a quest giver, you can take your influence flag and spread it to that quest giver's hut or their domain, whatever. So say I completed a quest for Aina of the Swamp, I could take my flag and I could give it to Aina to show that I've got influence over her. Now the trick is, if someone else does a quest for Aina and completes it, they get to put their flag on Aina's hut and they bounce my flag back to me. So as you can see, there's kind of give and take here. You're spreading your flags, but people can get their flags sent back to you if you aren't careful. And especially in the case of the quest givers, I would imagine the flags are gonna bounce on and off them quite a bit depending on who's completing what. Now, of course, the Circle of Realms is a war game at its core, so we need ways to spread flags from fighting, and that should really be the primary way to spread flags, or perhaps the more straightforward way to spread flags throughout the Circle of Realms. Now, I already said capturing enemy buildings allows you to spread your flag to them. But you know, destroying building is also a big landmark, so when you destroy an enemy player's building, we'll also say that you can spread your flag to that player too. And to do that, you'll actually take your flag and you'll put it on the building you destroy when you take that building off the field. That way, if the player ends up rebuilding that building, that flag comes back to you again. And then last but not least, if ever you kill an enemy hero, then you get to spread your flag to the faction whose hero you killed. So in our other playthrough, like when I killed Sepith as Bertanoth, I would be able to spread a flag to Anacria. When King Jalen killed Bertanoth for the Cursed Kingdom, then the kingdom could have spread their flag to me, and so on and so forth. And so that's the system at its core. Everyone is trying to spread their flags and keep their flags out throughout the Circle of Realms as opposed to getting them bounced back into their possession. And so to recap, the ways that you can spread these flags are advancing a tech age, unlocking an unlockable, capturing a building in the Circle of Realms, whether it's a neutral building or another player's building, destroying another player's building, completing a quest, or killing a hero. Let me know what you think of those methods for spreading flags. Let me know if you can think of any other ideas, other ways you think would be good, or faults you see with any of the ways of spreading flags. If you're like, oof, I don't think this one is a good idea for this reason. I tried to make it so that an aggressive player should get rewarded for being successful in their aggression. If someone's coming in and destroying buildings from another player, capturing buildings from another player, then that should be something that moves them a lot closer to victory. Likewise, a player who's able to defend and hold out and kill off a lot of heroes that are leading that attack, that player should move closer to victory without necessarily launching a full-scale counter-offensive into the enemy lands. But at the same time, I want to make sure there's enough moving pieces on the board where people can gather victory points in other ways without necessarily directly being in a head-to-head major full-scale conflict at someone's base. Now, that's the system at its core, but there's a couple of other twists or ideas I've got as well. And so one of them is this: whenever you get the chance to spread a flag, you can spread any flag in your possession. So what I mean by that is you could spread your own influence, or you could shake off influence that someone else has spread onto you. So say I've got a kingdom flag in my possession because, I don't know, say the kingdom killed one of my heroes. If I go back and kill a kingdom hero, I can put one of my flags over to the Cursed Kingdom, or I could return this flag to the Cursed Kingdom. Or if I even have another faction's flag, I could give their flag to the Cursed Kingdom instead. And that might sound very convoluted. Maybe thinking, well, why the heck would you ever want to do that? So here's my thinking as to why this makes the game more interesting. So the basic idea is this: say the Cursed Kingdom only needs to spread one more flag to win the game, but I need to spread like 5 more of my flags to win the game. Instead of trying to get myself to win when I get a next chance to spread my flag, I can try to return a flag to the kingdom, which puts them one step away from winning. And in some situations, it just might be a lot more beneficial to drag another player down rather than to propel yourself forward, especially if you're in an alliance and the management of flags is getting a little more interesting between multiple players. Now, ultimately, your goal is to get rid of all of your own influence flags, to spread all of them, and that is how you win the game. The first player to spread all 10 flags ends up being the victor. Now, if you are in an alliance with another player, that goal doesn't change. Only one person in the alliance needs to spread all 10 of their flags. But each player in the alliance can only spread flags from their card holder. They can't go spreading flags of their allies unless those flags ended up getting in their possession, in which case there aren't going to be too many reasons to spread those flags, but there will be some. So in that sense, it's obviously a lot easier to win in an alliance because you get 2 or more people working towards the same goal, but only one person actually needs to fully finish off all their flags. But there is a twist. For whichever player is getting their flag count down to 0, that player needs to not only have spread all of their flags, but they also can't have any of their ally flags in their possession either. So if I'm on an alliance with the Cursed Kingdom, if I want to win the game for us, I need to get rid of all my rebellion flags. I also have to make sure I don't have any Cursed Kingdom flags on me as well. This means it's easier for other players to shut me down by returning not only my flags to me, but also flags of my ally to me. And it also means that any late game betrayals are going to have to be very carefully thought through. So say we're in a very late stage of a game and I'm at war with the Cursed Kingdom. Cursed Kingdom has like half of my flags as a result of that, and I've got like half of their flags as a result. And say we each have an ally with us, and that ally is a lot weaker than both of us. We're kind of like the superpowers and our allies are way beneath us. Now, a tempting thing to do normally would be for us to betray our allies and then ally together. And then the 2 of us could just steamroll and win the game. But if we do that under this system, we're gonna find that we have a lot of each other's flags. And so we could do that, but it's gonna require spreading a lot more flags for us to end up winning. So it doesn't really rule out the strong people from turning on their weaker allies, but it makes it more difficult to do. And it adds this sort of flag management element that our weaker players will be employing as well. So for example, in the last game when I was playing as the Raiders, my ally Anacria was definitely the more put together, stronger team by the end of the game. And there was a real worry that the rebels and Anacria could switch around and team up against me and the Cursed Kingdom. Now, if this system were in place, one thing I could try to do as the Raiders in that situation would be trying to get Anacria's flags into the Kingdom's possession and the Kingdom's flags into Anacria's possession. The more of that is happening, the more secure my alliance is. Now, it would be very upfront and obvious that I'm doing that if I had an Anacrian flag in my possession and I'm shifting it over to the Kingdom player. It's very obvious why I would be doing that. I'm doing it so that they can't get into an alliance with Anacria as easily, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I like the idea of the more parasitic, players trying to manage the flow of influence to keep them securely latched on to a more powerful player in the game. Now I realize that the system, while a rework, is not a total revamp for the game is still going to take a long time. With flags being returned back to players, it's not going to be a very clear march forward to spreading all 10 of your flags, but still at any given moment we should be able to look around the map and see who is in the lead. And the game should still end sooner than it would otherwise. Plus, with these very clear concrete goals for players to strive towards, players will have a more fixed agenda and a more kind of serious plan about how to win the game overall, rather than just fighting to the death. And of course, the other big advantage is if I'm playing with people from out of town and they've got to leave at the end of a weekend or something like that, then we can end the game there, count our flags, and see who the victor is. And I even typed up ways to kind of like approach ties and stuff like that. So there's a number of ways we could kind of shift the counting of the flags if there's ties going on to get to a winner, hopefully. But I think I should be posting this on the rules page for my public website, so you can check out that link below. Go to thecircleofrealms.com if you want to see exactly how those ties break down. And if you got comments on those, please too leave them down below. Now the other thing I like about this system is I can definitely put variants of play in with this. So for example, say we do want to have a faster game in the Circle of Realms. Well, one small change we could do is we could get rid of the ability to resist someone's influence and spread their flags. We can make it so that you can only spread your own flags, in which case you're going to have a much clearer march forward to victory. The only flags that are really coming back into your possession are going to be flags from buildings being rebuilt, buildings being recaptured, and other people completing quests for witches around you. But tech gauges, unlockables, heroes killed, those kind of accomplishments are always going to move you forward consistently. So I'm definitely going to keep that as a variant in mind, and I'm going to give my players a choice whenever we set up a game. Hey, do you want to play with the more hardcore returning of flags to each other option, or do we want the sort of faster, every time you spread flags, you can only spread your own flags? And I'm a little bit curious to see what players pick. I have a feeling, I'm thinking about my friends I grew up playing this game with, they're probably going to want that more hardcore version still, although I have some local friends that want to play with me too, and I have a feeling that they might be drawn more so to the faster variant. So we'll see what ends up happening. Now that is in a nutshell how influence flags are going to work for the Circle of Realms. And I think that the thing I like most about this system is that it's very easy for me to tweak. If I think that one thing is too easy, I just got to remove that way of spreading flags. If I think that we need more ways to spread flags, I can come up with more and add them in. And I definitely don't want to reveal any of this yet, but it's also kind of led to ways I can modify the way some faction mechanics work. In particular, it's given me a couple ideas for how to uniquely approach raiders in the game. But that is definitely a topic for another video, so make sure that you are subscribed so that you can see more content from the Circle of Realms and see other developments I make for this game. Plus, of course, I'll be releasing more units and showing off more of the board in upcoming videos as well. Truth be told, I think we're kind of overdue for a tour of the board, especially now that I've added all the neutral buildings onto it at this point. So maybe sometime in December, I'll release something along those lines too. But like I said, my friends, please let me know what you think of this system. Please let me know if anything was confusing, if you need some clarifications. I can reply to comments down below if you got any questions, and let me know if you got suggestions or critiques. I have not tested this system out at all yet, so I'm totally open to ideas, and let me know if there's things I didn't think of. And there usually are things like that whenever I come up with a new system for my game. But otherwise, my friends, outside of that, be happy, be healthy, be well, and I'll see you next time here in the Circle of Realms.